Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So as I've told you in other reviews, there are somewhere in the region of 750, maybe even closer to 800 little craft breweries here in Sweden now, and the main reason that we've got so many of them is because the alcohol laws have been very strict for a long time here in the country. So this has led to a very strong home brewing culture. And these days, many of the home brewers are starting to register little businesses and turning professional, which is great. And you can find some real gems amongst these very small and relatively unknown Swedish craft breweries. And the access to Systembolaget is a lot easier for them now as well. And that means that we've got a very good choice of things to taste, actually, which is great. But yeah, for that reason, I always enjoy introducing a few new Swedish breweries to you here on the channel every month, and it's one of those reviews that we're going to do today. This beer is a style that I've always really enjoyed. It seems to be undergoing a little bit of a mini renaissance, if you like, in recent times, so I'm very curious to see how this one turns out, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Surte, to the north of Gothenburg, Göteborg, on the Swedish west coast, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri. So this particular beer is called Renegade Priests. It comes in at 6.9% ABV, and this one is a black IPA. So yeah, really curious to see how this one turns out. This beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2021. It caught my eye because of the name, Renegade Priests. I was just like, hell yeah. But yeah, then Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri, I didn't recognise the brewery's name, and I also saw that it was a black IPA, and I wanted to get one or two black IPAs for this month as well. But yeah, fingers crossed this is a good one. 6.9%, so for a regular IPA it's a little bit stronger. But yeah, hopefully it turns out to be nice, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. Definitely cool to introduce Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri on the channel for the very first time. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri. So Beerium, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Surte, to the north of Gothenburg, Göteborg, and the company was founded back in 2018. So the brewery has 7 owners. This is Martin Polno, Fredrik Reinholdsson, Mattias Gidlöf, Erik Högland, Marcelo Mili, Malte Hed, and Emil Staching, if I'm pronouncing his name right. I apologise if any of those pronunciations were wrong. I think that might be Staching. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, Surte is part of Ala municipality, and they actually wanted to include Ala in the name of the brewery originally, but the authorities stopped them from doing this, even though other breweries had used municipality names in their titles before. Apparently there is a little bit of a, from what I could understand, there was a little bit of a grey area in the law here that says, you know, municipality names are not permissible as names of breweries and things like that. But I thought that was a bit strange because, for example, you have Malmö Brewing Company. So yeah, I don't know how exactly that works. But anyway, they were told they couldn't use Ale as their name, because the original idea was that the brewery was going to be called Ale Kraftölsbryggeri, and of course, you know, Ale, A-L-E, it has its connotations in English as well. But the brewery itself is based in the old power station in Ala, which closed back in 1978. They started off with a 200-litre brew kit, and they've gradually added more tanks over the years. And in April of 2019, they opened their tasting bar at the brewery, which was called Beerium. But they've also started a members club, and they're hoping that this will help them invest further in the brewery's infrastructure. But more recently, in March 2021, they announced a partnership with Lilla Edet Brewery to form a new production company, which is going to be called the Utah Alvdalen Brewhus, or Utah Untappd Brewkes. My apologies, bad pronunciation there. But the plan for it is to be equipped with a 1,000 litre brew kit, and the first brews will take place there in November of 2021. Both breweries will, however, keep their current facilities that they have to produce smaller batches and do pilot brews and things like this. And yeah, they will be able to get their beer out there a little bit more as well, which will be really cool. But as of April 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 45 different kinds of beer, and that will no doubt increase over the next little while. They seem to be fairly prolific. 45 beers, having only been founded back in 2018, is a fairly good return. That's like a beer every kind of 3-4 weeks or something like that. So yeah, pretty cool actually. But that's all I can really tell you about the brewery. There wasn't too much information available on Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri, but I'm sure we'll be able to add to that at some point in the near future. But yeah, if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go forward then and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open it up. As you can see, it's very nicely presented. You can see there is the Beerium symbol there, which goes together nicely. Plain silver bottle cap on this one, but yeah, it looks very nicely, very kind of tasteful, very kind of straightforward. So yeah, I certainly like it. I think the orange and black, it's kind of like Harley Davidson motorcycles actually. That's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the Harley Davidson symbols. When you go over to the States, you'll see all these Harley Davidson dealerships and things like that. But yeah, 330ml bottle. I think I paid like 35 Swedish kroners for this one. So that's roughly about €3.50, about, yeah, just a little bit over £3 sterling, and maybe about $4.25 American for those of you watching in different places. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see this beer. Oh, one of my books was behind the computer's fallen down, but there we go. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I'm curious about this. So, there we go. 6.9% black IPA. So, this should be quite an interesting one. There was quite a wee bit of sediment visible in this, but I think a good bit of it, I know it's not too bad actually. It's actually just gathered kind of around the sides, to be honest with you. But yeah, should be all right. Should be all right. But yes, as I've told you in other videos, I really do enjoy a black IPA. One of the best ones I think you'll ever find will be the black salts and body malts from Total. That's one of my favourite ones. That's an Imperial black IPA. And in the early days, I always thought the Imperial black IPAs were a bit better than the original ones because they had a bit more kind of brown sugar in them to kind of balance them out. Because if they used, if you use too much black malt in a black IPA, it can come across very harsh and things like that. And for me, it just doesn't work. But I've noticed in recent times as well that quite a few breweries seem to be using more oats and wheat and taking an almost New England approach to the black IPA as well, which is kind of interesting. So I'm curious to see exactly how this one turns out, because it says on the back here this one is just contains just barley malt. So this one might be a little bit more of a proper kind of old school black IPA. But you can see when we poured this one, it poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say medium beige head on this one. It's not the darkest of beiges that you're going to come across, but as you would expect from a black IPA, it's poured a lovely dark ebony kind of colour. There's a nice sort of Coca-Cola. There's a nice sort of Coca-Cola edge to it, which looks very nice. But yeah, this isn't, there's nothing surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but overall it looks pretty damn nice, I have to say. I really like how this one goes about its business. So yeah, looks very, very good. And I can tell you something, when we opened this one up, I thought it smelled very nice as well. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one and see how we get on. Nothing particularly surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is when we're talking about its appearance. So, aroma time. That smells pretty nice. I'm curious to know what hops are in this because it smells very familiar. Could it be a little bit of Simcoe and a little bit of Amarillo or something? Simcoe is actually a very popular hop to use in black IPAs because it gives you some really nice red fruity characters. Normally, it's a bit passion fruity, but this beer definitely has a hint of orange, so that could be, you know, maybe a bit of Mandarina Bavaria, a little bit of Amarillo, Mosaic maybe as well would be another option. But the aroma of this beer is really nice actually. It is very, very nice. So yeah, let's try and break this down a little bit. So straight away with the beer, you can smell that kind of toasty, well-fired, bread crusty backbone, which you're always going to get with a black IPA. You're always going to get a little bit of that. I think essentially the black IPA was originally perceived as like a stout malt base and then just, you know, IPA hopping on top of that. So yeah, I think that's what the original idea was, and then they tried it and found that it worked. So yeah, but this one is, I can tell from the aroma, this one's actually very, very well balanced. And it is a little bit more old school as well. It doesn't come across as quite as thick and bready as some of the more New Englandy approach ones these days do. But yeah, so backbone of the beer, as I say, that toasty, well-fired bread crusty element there. I really like that. On top of that, you get some nice wholemeal, brown bready elements there, and that kind of smoothens the beer out. And then you can smell a little bit of brown sugar in this one as well. This beer definitely has. There's one or two little nutty undertones, no sorry, not nutty, woody undertones to the beer as well. You definitely get a little touch of woodiness out of this one. But in the middle of the nose, you're definitely getting a nice bit of brown sugar in there. There is a bit of a sweet caramel, which I think is really nice, and also a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So the malt base overall is very, very nicely balanced. It comes across as very smooth, and it's got a good little bit of sweetness in there, and you do get that kind of toasty, roasty, toasty element out of it that you would expect of a black IPA. So yeah, malty side of things, it seems to be very good. And when it comes to black IPAs, I really feel that the malty side of the beer is critical. A lot of people just think about hops these days, which in a way annoys me a little bit. I think malts are kind of often, and IPAs are often underestimated. If you've got a nice malt base in there as well, it can just add so much depth to the beer. And you know, maybe it's, I don't know if it's maybe because the New England IPAs are always just very, very smooth, but in the West Coast IPAs, I think, you know, you've got a few more little nuances and things in the West Coast IPAs compared to the New England ones. But, you know, in the black IPA, I think in particular, the malty side of things is absolutely critical. And for me, I like a bit of toastiness, I like a bit of breadiness in there, and also a bit of sweetness. That's what I look for in a good black IPA, and I can smell all of those in this one so far, so I'm curious to see what it tastes like. But on the hoppy side of things, there's definitely a wee touch of earthiness to this one. There's a good floral aromatic quality to it as well, which I think works really nicely. There's something that's telling me from the green component here that there might be Cascade in this, and it's quite common actually to use Cascade as the bittering hop in black IPAs. They were known for a period of time as Cascadian dark ales, although I think, you know, some breweries do actually release black IPAs under the name Cascadian Darks, and usually they've got a bit of Chinook and a bit of Cascade in them, of course. But I'm not clear on whether a Cascadian Dark Ale is just a black IPA with only Cascade, or if there is actually some technical definition of this. But you can tell a little bit from the green component in this, because it's not too pungent, but it's very, very bright. I think there is a good little bit of Cascade in this one. So yeah, I do get a good little bit of grassiness out of the beer as well. It's got a nice kind of zestiness on the very front of the nose from the grassy part of the beer. So yeah, the green component I think is very nice. Little touch of earthiness, nice bright floral aromaticity to it. I wouldn't describe it as spicy, just nice and bright. Then you've got a little bit of a kind of grassy zestiness coming out of the beer as well, like I said. But yeah, green component works well with the malty side of things. On the fruity side of the beer then, just to round off the aroma, this beer again is very well balanced. For me, there was quite a bit of an oily orangey character in the beginning, but I'm noticing that less and less as I go on. There's a good little bit of a kind of raisiny quality coming out of the beer as well. You get a bit of a juicy plum as well, I think. So there's a good bit of red fruit to this one, and you can pick out a wee bit of a kind of more oily blackberry as well, which is interesting. So I think, you know, these are typical notes that you can get from black IPAs. There's quite a few of them have an orangey character, and quite a few of them also have these red fruity notes that I'm talking about in here. So I do think there's a bit of Cascade in this, potentially a little bit of Simcoe and maybe some Amarillo or something like that as well. Always nice to play guess the hops, but with darker malt bases it is considerably harder than it is with the lighter malt bases, I would say. But yeah, take a bit of time and ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. I think though it is now time for us to have a taste of this one. So yeah, this one is the Renegade Priests, a 6.9% black IPA from Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri in Surte in Ala, just to the north of Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. First impression, very, very smooth. This is an interesting one because the roasty toasty side of things just takes a little bit of time to come out of it, which is interesting. But yeah, it is pretty nicely balanced, that actually, and you can kind of tell with the level of roastiness you get out of this one and the sort of more oily nature of the malt base. This is like a more old school black IPA, but they've got the balance pretty well in this one, I have to say. As I said earlier, quite a few of the early black IPAs were all just, black malt, and they were just a little bit too harsh for me. But, as you always say, your palate kind of adjusts with time. So maybe if I went back and tried those beers now, I wouldn't find them quite as harsh because I know the style better. So just be aware of that. Your palate is always evolving if you're drinking beer regularly. Absolutely. So yeah, the flavour profile of this beer, I think, is it's really nicely done. Actually, I think it suits everything. It's got everything that I would want from a black IPA. It does lean a little bit more towards the bready side of things. I will say that it does get more and more bready the more that you drink of it, but you also get a bit of sweetness out of it, and the toastiness kind of lingers there too. But they've got a good malt base here, and for me, that's the critical point with a black IPA. So yeah, let's try and break that down for you then. So straight away with this beer, you can feel that kind of wholemealy, brown bready sort of thing just blankets the middle of your tongue. Pardon me. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then move diagonally back, you will get one or two little very, very slight hints of kind of woody undertone there. But what you're going to notice is that as you go towards the back half of that middle third of your palate, the roasty toastiness really pushes its way out of this one the further you go into the aftertaste. And the beer on the back third of the palate, it is actually quite bitter in that sense, I have to say. But yeah, this one, the sort of black malts or roasty malts, I don't know if it would be Carafa that they would be using in this one. Something tells me it could be a little bit of Carafa that's in here. These kind of malts that you get in this one, they come out very nicely, I have to say. So yeah, it's quite a bready leaning beer, this one though, definitely. So yeah, as I say, middle third of your palate, you get that smooth bready layer to it. Then, as I say, towards the back of that middle third of your tongue and into the back third of your tongue, you can feel more of the kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty elements there. If you go on top of that, the bready layer actually does kind of thicken up a little bit, and it feels a little bit of almost like as a wet breadiness, if that makes sense. It's really interesting. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate, you do get a bit of a kind of sweet caramel element out of it, and as you move further away, this is on top of the bready notes, but as you move further away from that centre part of your palate, you start to get a little bit more of a kind of biscuity quality out of the beer as well, a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, it's quite straightforward, the malt base in this one, but it really comes across as just very well balanced. So yeah, I have to say that works pretty nicely in my opinion. I really like that about this one. So yeah, middle third of your palate, brown bready base, you get a little bit of a kind of roasty toasty bread crusty note on the back half of the palate. Further out, you get a few woody undertones on the front half of that middle third of your palate, sweet caramel in the middle on top of the bread, and then some biscuity notes as you push out towards the the sides of your palate on top of that. If we go to that back third of your palate, though, on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel the sort of grainy side of the beer gets a little bit more intense there. You get a slight thickness to it, and then you get a really intense roasty toasty thing. And then on the back third of your palate, you have a little bit more of a kind of toasty, grainy sort of element there. So yeah, you definitely get that well-fired toasty bread crust thing on the back third of your palate, and that forms the backbone of the beer there. But you can feel on top of that roasty, sort of toasty backbone that the sort of yeasty flavours. You get that sort of more airy yeasty flavour kind of coming out. You can feel the flavours just a little bit taller on that back third of your palate, which I think works really nicely. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate how that side of things goes together in this beer, definitely. So yeah, as you start from the back, the flavour kind of goes like this, and it just condenses down, and as you reach that border region, it goes like this, and then into the middle third of your palate, you know, you've definitely got a kind of more dense flavour profile on that middle third of your palate there, and it works really nicely. So yeah, like that about this one for sure. But yeah, let's move on to the hoppy side of things then. I think we've discussed the hoppy side of the beer quite the malty side of the beer quite well. So yeah, in the back corners of the palate, there's a good little bit of earthiness in there, which I do like. So there is a nice little bit of earthiness, but as you move further forward, the earthiness does spread a little bit, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you can feel there is a little bit of a sort of piney resin note comes out of this one. So I wonder if there is a wee bit of a Chinook being used in this one. But on top of that, you get a nice floral character, and that makes me think there's Cascade. So I've got a feeling that there is Chinook and Cascade in this one potentially. That would make sense. And those are quite popular hops to use in black IPAs. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, you get a nice little bit of a lighter kind of grassy sort of thing, and there is a touch of zestiness in there as well, which I think works too. So yeah, the green component's adding a good little bit of contrast, if you like, to the roasty black malt side of things. So yeah, I like that for sure. I certainly like that. Yeah, the fruity side of the beer as well is also quite interesting. So let's focus on that front third of your palate to round off the tasting section. So on that front third of your palate, as I always say, that's where you get the nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. On that border region, between front third and middle third of your palate, again you can feel a little bit of a bready build up, and then a really toasty, grainy, bready side of things. And then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of smooth and bready again, and a little bit roasty and toasty. But yeah, the fruity side of things, goes together really well on top of that. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of grapefruity element, and again that makes me think about Chinook. But as you move further forward from that, it mellows out a little bit. You get a juicy kind of plummy quality to it, and as you move further forward, there's a little bit of a kind of there is a little bit more of a kind of figgy quality comes out of the beer. And as you reach the front half of that front third of your palate, there's a nice oily, there is a nice more kind of, you get a bit of a kind of black curranty note out of it as well actually, which is interesting. But I do get a wee orangey vibe on the front half of that front third of the tongue as well. The front half always gives you the more oily notes, and I get a wee bit of orange in there, which makes me wonder, maybe a bit of Mandarina Bavaria or a bit of Amarillo. I don't think it's Mosaic. I think I was wrong about Simcoe earlier, to be honest. I do think I was a bit wrong about Simcoe. I think it might be Chinook, Cascade, and a little bit of Mandarina Bavaria or Amarillo that's in this one. But you certainly get a little bit of a kind of more oily black berry sort of thing out of this beer as well. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business. It's a solid black IPA, one of the smoother examples I've come across recently, and also one of the slightly more bready examples. And that's interesting as well, because as I said, this one is an only barley malt, a barley malt only black IPA. But it gets a thumbs up from me. I certainly like this one, and I'd be curious to try a few of their other beers going forward. So I need to see what else they actually have in the next one. Maybe I need to try a regular IPA from them and see what that's all about. But yeah, solid beer from these guys and a nice introduction to the brewery, definitely. Let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So yeah, mouthfeel, as I say, this beer for me is kind of pushing the top end of mid-body. The carbonation is very smooth, but it's also got a lovely oiliness to it as well. So this beer's a mix between smooth and oily for me. There is a good bit of bitterness to this. I wouldn't be surprised if this is, you know, maybe 80 IBUs, something like that. You're getting bitterness from both the malty side of things and the hoppy side of things. So like I said, this beer does have a nice roasty toasty backbone to it. The breadiness sits on top and you've got a bit of sweetness there. So the malt base is well balanced. Roastiness, smoothness and sweetness all coming out there. That's what you want from a black IPA. The hoppy side of the beer gives you a wee bit of bitterness, and the fruits are just nice and oily, which is, I enjoy oily fruits. Can't speak. I enjoy oily fruits in my beers, especially in the black IPAs. I think these work best when they've just got a little bit of oiliness in the mouthfeel, and this one has that. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. So this one was the Renegade Priests, a 6.9% black IPA from Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri in Surte, Alle, to the north of Gothenburg. I think this has been a really nice and solid introduction to the beer. One of the more bready and smooth black IPAs I've had in recent times, which is, as I say, impressive when you consider it's only barley malt in this one. It's not wheat and oats like you're getting in some of the others. But yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri. We will see about returning to these guys at some point in the near future. But in the meantime, stand you just now. Check out their social media. Check out my social media as well. And I'll catch you guys very soon. The Renegade Priest 6.9% black IPA from Beerium Kraftölsbryggeri. Slange, skull, cheers, and see you in the next review.